policies that were passed that affected the United States from the early 1930s to about the beginning of the 21st century. And then going down, we have some major events that affected food demand and agricultural revolution. Like the 1988 drought, which basically decimated crops and reduced the total crop yield by 37%. Then you have the 1993 flooding, which decimated areas around the Mississippi River and caused approximately 4.5 million of hectare crops to be lost during that time. And then from 2005 to 2008, we got hurricanes around the Gulf of Mexico, Florida, and southeastern United States, which basically just caused pollution and made it hard for farmers to grow their crops. So for some historical context in India, we got the post-independent time period, which was from 1947 to 1960s. Basically, this time period focused on achieving more self-sufficient food supplies and established institutions like the Indian Council of Agriculture. Then you have the Green Revolution, which was from 1960s to the early 1970s, which focused on introducing crop varieties, fertilizers, and other irrigation technologies to help boost agricultural development. And then in 1991, you have the liberalization and economic reforms, which focused on shifting the Indian economy to a more market-oriented economy and increased agricultural and rural infrastructure that focused on cash crops specifically. And then present day, it focuses on diversification, specifically into horticulture, dairy, and fisheries. And for some historical context, in Ethiopia, you have 1950, which established agricultural research by Jimma and Ambo, which basically led to the establishment of the Institute of Agricultural Research, which is IAR, which focused on crops and animal livelihood and land management. And in 1970s, you have the development of single farm states, basically like how we have in the United States. Each state focused specifically on a type of crop. And then from 2000 to 2020 or present day, you have the investment of agriculture, which led to economic growth. Specifically, an agri-food system basically is just focused on farm to table. And in the image, you can see the just brief time period of the different systems Ethiopia focused on, and from the 1930s to about present day. And then for some exports and imports, for the United States and India and Ethiopia, these are some of the products that they export and import, a majority being grains, soybeans, and vegetables and tree nuts, and importing products that are not easily grown in their designated country. For exports and imports, we have 6 to 5 different graphs. The first 2 graphs are for America. The first graph is the top left is on imports from 2001 to 2000.
Which one is that?
This one is focused on imports in the United States, and it's basically broken up between the different agricultural products. So, for example, this dark blue represents sugar, and then the yellow represents animal products, and so on. And then the graph right next to it is just agricultural exports for the same time period for the United States. And then if we go down, it's the same thing for India. As you can see, roughly there's 16 billion difference between the amount of exports and imports in India. But for Ethiopia, as you can see, they focus more on exports than they do on imports. So the value of exports in Ethiopia is much greater than the value of imports.
Next, we're going to talk about employment absorption. This is basically how the labor force is divided between the 3 industries, which is agriculture, industry, and services. So in Ethiopia, we have about 65% of the people that are in agriculture. This shows a huge dependency on agriculture. Iran's economy is mostly dependent on agriculture. And if you look at India, it has 45.5%, which shows like a transitioning country. It's transitioning more from an agriculture-based economy to a more services-based economy. And last we have USA with 10.5%, which is a very little percentage dependency on agriculture. This shows like a developed country that's more focused on like technology and services. Now this is the net farm income percentage. So basically what this means is net farm as a percentage of your total income. It shows what percent of a country's income is basically for farming. So Ethiopia has 40% of its income that comes from farming. Again, a huge number, but the issue with this is it can be very unstable as climate changes are very frequent and droughts are also very frequent in Ethiopia. This could affect the percentage heavily if there's any severe climate changes. And if India with 13%, which is still a significant number, that depends on agriculture. Again, it's a number that's declining slowly every year and it's transitioning to more service focused. And then lastly, the US with only 7.2%. This again very highly focused on technology and services rather than agriculture. So if you look at it, this kind of shows like 3 countries in 3 different stages of their development cycle. Ethiopia in one extremity showing high dependence on agriculture, while India is in the middle and USA is on the other side. So this is kind of like a few of the challenges faced by India and Ethiopia in their agricultural production and employment. So we have small land holdings. What this basically means is lands in India are like fragmented into like small pieces. So it's hard for people to own large areas of land and scale up. And next we have monsoon dependence. This is kind of common in both India and Ethiopia. They're highly dependent on rain. So if there's any irregular rainfall patterns, then it kind of affects the output and the production. Then you have technology gaps. Rural areas barely have access to technology and higher, let's say, HPVCs and stuff like that. They don't really have much access to them. And then you have employment issues. Most areas face like seasonal employment. So most people are employed for like a season, and then after half a season, they're forced to look for a new job. And we have market barriers. There are pretty strict policies in rural areas, and they don't have access to global markets. So they're forced to sell at their local market at whatever price is set by the local area. And lastly, we have environmental impact. So obviously, over the course of the years, there's been a decent amount of soil degradation and depletion in groundwater resources. Now, if you look at Ethiopia's issues, again, we have rain-fed agriculture, high dependence on rain. Then low productivity because of their traditional methods. They focus mostly on subsistence farming, so basically farming for their own need and not for the benefits of the market. So this causes like low productivity in the country. And we have infrastructure deficits, like they have poor infrastructure, poor roads. This leads to trouble in transport, so they can't really export the goods much or even scale up. And we have labor migration. Due to this low facilities, most people tend to migrate from the villages over to the cities in search for like better livelihoods. Then we have land tenure. This basically means most of the land in Ethiopia is state-owned and not really allowed for local farmers to own their own land. This kind of diverts them to farming. And then we have food security risks. Due to the high unstable environment they face and all the droughts and stuff, they're mostly forced to have food security. Now, if you look at this graph, this is basically a comparison of growth between India, Ethiopia, and USA in 3 different timelines. So, if you take 2000, for example, India faced moderate growth. This is mostly because of green revolution effects that were declining at this time, and also they shifted more to staples like wheat and rice. Ethiopia had low growth because of the poor infrastructure, and their agriculture was still heavily on subsistence farming, so they weren't making much money off of it. And then USA was already developed at this point, so they had high productivity. They focused more on exports since they had full access to global markets. In 2012, India faced a significant growth because they diversified the crops to horticulture and pulses. So they had more broader crops. They also had national food security mission, which also boosted their productivity. And if you look at Ethiopia, they also had rapid growth because the government focused more on agriculture at this point of time, and they're trying to affect with the climate changes and stuff. And then finally, we have USA who face stable growth because of they're focusing more on biofuels and GMOs. GMOs basically genetically modified organisms, so they're trying to get genetically modified plants at this point and practicing more sustainable practices. In 2024, India had mixed growth, and this is just because most of the countries around this time are facing climate changes due to the unstable environment. both. Although its productivity in horticulture and process increased rapidly, evident daily it showed a massive boost in production. Now in Ethiopia, they had steady growth because of climate change. Again, they were not able to expand as much, but their government focused more on sustainable practices to help them boost their economy a lot. And then in USA, they had consistent productivity because they focused more on a new type of technology like agri-tech, which focused innovation and environmental impacts, and they also try to meet the local demand and global demand at the same time. So now these are some common factors that affect food demand. So as population growth, is basically if population grows, this naturally leads more people to start buying more food. This kind of makes the agriculture being forced to produce more than what it was producing before to meet the new demand. Then we have income levels. So as people get more money, their buying power increases. This makes them want to purchase like more high quality food like dairy, meat, and higher quality. They focus shift more to nutritious food, which is also hard to produce, and this also kind of increases the demand, forcing agriculture to produce more. And lastly, you have climate change. So climate change can be good or bad. It depends on how the climate change affects. Like if in case of a drought, this can obviously affect the produce and decrease the quality of products that are available. This increases the price naturally, and the demand increases. In other cases, it could benefit them too. But this mostly causes the countries to be more import dependent, which is not good for a country in the long term.
Your name is you?
No.
No.
Now, some agricultural practices among different nations. In the U.S., we have a good mix of both new and old technology, like biotechnology, fertilizer, trend analysis, irrigation, as well as hand planting, horse plows, and the Three Sisters method. In India, India and Ethiopia both have more traditional methods of farming, like soil preparation, sowing, terraced farming, ox plowing, and pastoralism, which reflects the United States' earlier advancements and development in agriculture compared to India and Ethiopia. But even with that, the U.S. still faces environmental problems, just like Ethiopia and India do. Global warming is a problem across all three nations, as well as pollution, biodiversity loss, and erosion in the United States, compared to water scarcity in Ethiopia and India. Metal pollution in Ethiopia. Now, some government policies and subsidies in the U.S. The major factor here is the Farm Bill, which is reviewed every 5 years. The Agriculture Improvement Act of 2018 provides subsidies for crop insurance, conservation programs, and organic farming. And other key initiatives like the Conservation Reserve Program provide payments to farmers for converting environmentally sensitive land into conservation reserves. And there are also subsidies available for biotechnology and precision agriculture to help enhance productivity and sustainability. Whereas in India, government policies are more focused on improving market access, crop insurance and irrigation. The national agricultural market creates a unified national market for agricultural commodities. And the PMKSY focuses on irrigation efficiency, and the PMFBY focuses on crop insurance. There are also additional subsidies for organic farming in India as well. And in Ethiopia, they're focused on productivity and food security. The growth and transformation plans both focus on improving agricultural productivity and sustainable land management, while the Feed the Future initiative enhances agricultural value chains and increases incomes. These subsidies in Ethiopia are usually targeted at smaller farmers to help improve their access to modern technology.
3 minutes is done, but you still get 3 more minutes.
Okay, I just have 3 case studies for the 3 countries. Case studies in the U.S. Successful agricultural projects include, firstly, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, has invested over $146 million in sustainable agricultural research projects This project aims to improve the resilience and sustainability of all food and agricultural systems. For example, the University of California is working on alleviating groundwater overuse and sustaining irrigated agriculture in southwest US. And also, secondly, we have the Regional Conservative Partnership Program, RCPP. The U.S. Department of Agriculture and USDA has also invested $1.5 billion in 92 partnership projects, which shows how much money the U.S. spends in agriculture and innovation. For successful agriculture projects in India, when I was doing the research, I came across, I don't know if it's pronounced Jira. Yeah. I came across the Jira as project, which basically initiated by the tribal women farmers in, I can't really pronounce the place, so I'm sorry. Focuses on conserving the traditional Jira-pool rice variety. The project has expanded to cultivation area from 120 to 400 acres and increased production from 180 to over 1,000 tons. It has received support from the Global Environment Facility and the United Nations Environmental Program to promote agricultural biodiversity and improve food security. That was one of the top projects that's gained attention from around the world. And secondly, we have the Natural Farming Initiative, which is rapidly growing in India. Around 800,000 farmers adopting sustainable practices. This initiative emphasizes eco-friendly farming techniques, such as integrated pest management, which has covered 5 million hectares. And Ethiopian agricultural substances, we have the Feed the Future Ethiopia seed system and the Feed the Future Ethiopia transform agriculture, aimed at supporting and creating Ethiopia's agricultural systems and creating food systems, increasing percentage yield of crops and reducing waste. The system generally just kind of like subsidizes like good anything good farmers do towards like increasing the percentage yield of agriculture in the country, and also like supporting agriculture, Ethiopia's agricultural ecosystem in the process. Conclusions: United States passed. We have mechanization and industrialization. The U.S. saw significant agricultural mechanization starting in the 19th century with the introduction of tractors, combined harvesters, and other machinery. The Green Revolution, post-World War II also, and now present day.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, present day sustainable practices and technological integration. India in the past, traditional farming, historical Indian agriculture was labor intensive and relied heavily on monsoon rains. But India now has diverse practices, which include employing a mix of traditional and modern farming techniques, including organic farming and the use of genetically modified crops. And Ethiopia in the past used subsistence farming, which traditionally been with small older farmers growing crops primarily for their own consumptions, and they had challenges, sacrifice challenges such as drought, land degradation, and limited access to modern inputs. But present day, they have agricultural growth, and Ethiopia has seen impressive agricultural growth due to public investments and initiatives in